Good morning, everyone. We are here today with our good friend Luiz Villaca that is going to present to us. Let me formally introduce him. He's an electronics engineer with an MCC from Carnegie Mellon University. Sorry, I got the YouTube here. Starting again. Luiz Villaca is an electronics engineer with an MSc from Carnegie Mellon University and a Manchester University MBA. He's a worker at Grupo Fraterno, a Spiritist center in São Paulo, Brazil, where he works in the medium mystic meetings and also teaches classes on Spiritism. And he has been here with us sharing his knowledge for some time now, so we are very happy to have him. Luiz is with you.
Thank you, João. Thank you, everybody. I'm honored with this invitation, and I do hope that we'll be able to interest you in part of the things that we're going to talk about today. I'm just preparing my environment. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Good. Thank you, Paco. Today we're going to talk about the consequences of the Spiritist knowledge. I'm sure you all know all that I'm going to talk about today, but maybe we can share things in a slightly different perspective, and maybe one or two bits will attract your attention. So I will do my best to fulfill this. A question of order before we start. For those who have an image, whenever in my presentations I have, standard bold letters, those are either my ideas or ideas reproduced from a body of knowledge, let's say that. As an example, the ideas here mostly follow the Brazilian Spiritist Federation view, and they come from EAD. That's the Advanced Curriculum for the Study of Spiritism, prepared by the Brazilian Spiritist Federation. Having a peek on the next slide, just a peek. Whenever you see italic, this has been taken straight from the original text. They're not my words. They're reproducing, word by word reproduction. And whenever I have, those three dots, is that I took away part of it to be more compact and maybe more precise. As I know that some of you do not have an image, you're connected by phone, I will read more than I usually do. So probably read every slide so that you guys can get the content, okay? So let's talk about consequences of the Spiritist knowledge. Spiritist knowledge favors the improvement of human beings because as a process that enhances consciousness, it produces important results, such as clarification about oneself. We learn one's origin, destiny, the reason for us to be in here, reincarnating. We understand about death or disincarnation and about life on the spiritual plane. Also, learning, we learn about one's needs to become better, how we become better through the development of virtues. Overall, this could be, a short compact of how it enhances us. From Heaven and Hell, Allan Kardec tells us, Spiritists' progress consists in the fruit of their own labor. But since they are free, they labor for their advancement with greater or lesser activity or negligence, according to their will, accelerating or retarding their progress and, consequently, their own happiness. Every spirit who lags behind cannot blame anyone but itself, just as the one who evolves quickly has the exclusive merit of its own efforts. The point being that people can help us, they can show us the way, they can try to teach us, but it's up to each one of us to actually learn, absorb, and incorporate what we learn in our day-to-day behavior. It's up to us, nobody else. Nobody can do this for us. Whoops. Emmanuel tells us on the way to the light, On the Way to the Light, and you that were here with us during our last reading of this book will remember, because we studied those 3 paragraphs. Spiritists implemented the regime of responsibility, wherein each spirit, each of us, has to enrich the list of its own qualities. Due to its understanding of individual effort and labor, he's talking about us, huh? It's not deceived by the utopias of absolute equality. And Spiritism, because of its awareness of the imperatives of human solidarity, does not become an instrument of oppression for the magnates of wealth and power. Whoops, não trocou. Now it did. This regime of responsibility is hard. To persist in the good is an arduous task. Perdão. To resist in the good is an arduous task that requires firm action of the will. Managing the will, our will, as an instrument for acquiring new evolutionary conquests must be a conscious operation to fight imperfection. Essentially, that's all that's being said here. We must have, own the responsibility of improving ourselves. This is our responsibility. Going to Leon Denis now, this is from After Death. This is a book that has been translated to English. And I don't know if you guys have already read it. It's big, 3 parts. I believe it's like 1,200 pages. Anyway, on part 3, Leon Denis shared with us the knowledge of why we exist is of incalculable, difficult word, incalculable consequences for the improvement and elevation of the person. He who knows where he's going treads firmly and gives to his action a vigorous impulse. Negativistic doctrines cloud life and lead logically to sensualism and disorder. Religions making existence a very problematic work of personal salvation consider it from a selfish and narrow-minded point of view. With the philosophy of the spirits, the perspective is modified and widened. Whoops, I was too fast. Whoops, no, sorry about that. Going the wrong way. Good, I was here. Next slide, I went 2 slides ahead. What we must seek is no longer earthly happiness, but continuous improvement. For in this world of the incarnate, happiness is only a chimera. The means to accomplish this is the observation of the moral law in all its forms. So, Leon Denis here is not only telling us that we must take responsibility, but also is giving us a path. Observation of the moral law is a good way towards improvement. And he continues, and this is interesting. Through this ideal, society is indestructible. It defies all vicissitudes, all events. It invigorates itself in misfortunes and always finds ways, he's talking about society, in the midst of adversity to surpass itself. So now we are widening the perspective. We have responsibility not only towards our own improvement, but also towards improving society as a whole. The clarified spirit acquires a new vision of life, of himself and of others. Supposing we are all clarified spirits, we pursue behavioral parameters that interfere directly or indirectly, sooner or later, in the improvement of the world. So I'm saying something that you already know, but it's a good thing to remind us that we have a responsibility not only to ourselves, to our society, but also to our world. Each of us individually that have the Spiritist knowledge is partially responsible for taking our world towards a world of regeneration. We also have a part to do here. João has mentioned in other venues or in instances that the elevated spirits are doing a lot of work to improve Earth, but we must do our part. We that have the Spirit's knowledge must do our part as well, individually, by our personal evolution. Now going to André Luiz, and this is probably a book that has not been translated to English. It's a book called, this is my translation, Sunshine in the Souls, Sol na Alma is the original title. I didn't reproduce it for lack of space. Anyway, in chapter 56, he is very strong. André Luiz shared with us that in his view, the Spiritist knowledge is as important in the realm of the soul as literacy is in the domains of ordinary life. Humanity, according to André Luiz, has as much need of a Spiritist knowledge, as it has of bread or antibiotics, which, by the way, must be manufactured and stored before infection contaminates the body and hunger appears. Such learning, and what learning we mean here, our learning of the Spiritist knowledge, necessarily implies in study and work, by the way, is what we are doing right now together, responsibility to commitments and duties. That's what the guys who connected today on time also did. Fighting bad tendencies. That's something we must do by ourselves. And persevering effort for good. We do all that, and when least expected, changes occur in the quality of thoughts emitted by the individual, by us. And the quality of our thoughts reflect in a lot of things, including our words and our behavior. The individual, we change for the better. because we begin to understand the need to be good, and also we begin to progress morally, not just intellectually. In this sense, the Spiritist doctrines point to a safe path that one must follow, or that one may follow along the evolution. There's a book. This book is called The Truth Answer. It has not been translated to English. I try to bring here to you references that are different from your usual references. Try to, bring something new, something different. And this book has a lot of chapters. And I don't even know if my translation is good, because it could be The Truth Replies, but the book's not structured in the form of questions and answers. So I believe the correct translation would be The Truth Answers. And there are many, many short chapters by Luiz and Emmanuel. This in particular comes from Emmanuel, and actually is the very first chapter of the book. And let's hear Emmanuel here. He tells us that the influence of the Spiritism as a liberating movement of consciousness will be a precious factor of evolution everywhere. In science, it will create new horizons to the glory of the Spirit. In philosophy, it will trace higher principles for the ineluctable advance of progress. Emmanuel writes like that, right? In religion, it will establish supreme interpretive values, freeing living faith from the shadows that imprison it in stagnation and ignorance. Then he goes on, I skipped a lot of it, and he finalizes with this. In all sectors of terrestrial growth, ahead of the future, it will teach and raise, building and consoling, with the truth to guide its redemptive march. He's talking about Spiritism and Spiritist knowledge. However, it's only in the heart that Spiritism can really transform life. Now, what he's pointing out is that part of the learning had to do with the heart, with love. That's obviously he's referring to here. To add to that, I brought a little piece from the Gospel according to Spiritism. And this communication is attributed to Lazarus. You all know who is Lazarus from the Bible, the one that Jesus that came back from his grave, let's say, in the presence of Jesus 4 days after he had passed away. He had passed away, that's the correct word. Or he had been interred, maybe that's a better word. I put this illustration here. It is a 6th century mosaic showing the raising of Lazarus of Bethany. This is in a church in Italy. Just so we have a nice picture. I like to have pictures in our presentation, in my presentations. Anyway, and what Lazarus has communicated and is reproduced in the Gospel according to the Spirit. He told us that the exquisite apex of sentiment is love. Not love in the ordinary sense of the term, but that inner sun that condenses and joins at its ardent focal point all suprahuman aspirations and revelations. The law love replaces the personality of one with the union of all beings and extinguishes societal misery. Just as a curiosity, I understand that the spirit of Lazarus has also appeared to a known person, El Cid, around 1100, I believe, after in the middle of the Black Ages. I didn't know that just until recently. Anyway, let's go on. So, Spiritist learning goes beyond the consoling aspect. What is this consoling aspect? That which comforts and sympathizes under the auspices of fraternity and charity. Spiritist knowledge is a message of redemption for the human being. It's a message that considers individual effort as a driving force in the construction of knowledge and moralization, even though we all are in a world of trials and atonements. Point being, we are all together in this effort to improve ourselves, our society, and our world, we Spiritists. And the more we know, as João usually points out, the more responsibility we have to actually do that and incorporate that. I know we'll probably break our line of thought for a few moments, or more than a few months, because I want to share something with you. Actually, it's advice for us Spiritist workers. It is a book. It comes from a book that has not been translated to English, as far as I know. That's called Psychophonic Instructions. And I find it very interesting. And I have to start with part of the introduction because it explains a little bit. So this introduction was written by Arnaldo Rocha. Arnaldo Rocha was a worker in Minas Gerais, Spiritist group in Brazil, worker for many years and close to Chico Xavier. So let's go through what Arnaldo Rocha writes to her in his introduction named Required Explanation. This is a 3-page thing. I just cut a few paragraphs so that we understand the context. So tell us, Arnaldo. Chico Xavier several times told us about the desire expressed by the spiritual mentors in the sense of creating a group of conscientious and responsible brothers for specialized assistance to difficult problems. Obsessions is what he means. At this time, Chico Xavier was about 45 years old, and he noticed a recurring problem of obsessing spirits appearing in his writing sections. His brother had already passed away, and he thought, there was the need for a second group in his town just to deal with obsessions. So eventually, Arnaldo Rocha, put together this group, started the sections, and he explains in this required explanation, his introduction, the structure of the meetings in his group. Actually, the structure is very similar. The process is very similar to the ones I believe you have in SJNY, and it's very, very close to what we have here in Grupo Fraterno, with the exception that in Grupo Fraterno, at the end of the session, we give word to the elevated spirits that coordinate the meeting, but they rarely manifest themselves, maybe 4 or 5 times a year, no more than that. The point being that in their meetings, in the final part, and now I'm going to read again. It is in the final part that we dedicate to prayer for the sick at distance. And in this 15 minutes that precede the closing, we always receive, through Francisco's somnambulistic psychophony, the word of our instructors and disincarnated benefactors. There's a typo there. And continuing, he talks more, and then he mentions that a friend of the group with captivating kindness offered us his own sound recorder. We are talking here, gentlemen and ladies, 1954. So a sound recorder was something. We could use it in Pedro Leopoldo, and delighted, we kept it as a valuable loan. In this photo, obviously Chico Xavier is younger than 40 something. This is a former photo, I would guess 20 years earlier. And this gentleman here on the right, besides Chico, is Álvaro, who wrote his introduction. And he goes on. That is how, since the night of March 11, 1954, thanks to the goodness of God and the generosity of a friend, we were able to fix the speeches of the instructors and disincarnated brothers who visited us. And later, someone suggested the advisability of organizing a book with the present spoken communications. The first obtained through the psychophonic faculties of the medium Xavier. I did not know that prior to this. That was his first book that reproduced his psychophonic faculties, because usually he was I forgot the word, but he used to write the communications. And here we have it presented. So this is introduction. What I'm going to show you now is the introduction to chapter 8, written by Chico Xavier. Tell us, Chico Xavier. At the end of our tasks, at the evening meeting of April 29, 1954, we were pleasantly surprised by the visit of Professor Cícero Pereira. Talking about Cícero Pereira now, he was a valiant fighter for Spiritism in Minas Gerais, where he is widely known and affectionately remembered for his great service experience. As president of the União Espírita Mineira, based in Belo Horizonte, and as a devoted brother to all the companions of our cause. Here we consign the valuable psychophonic message that he has left us. This comes from the mouth of Chico Xavier. And here's a picture of Chico Xavier, about 40, I believe. It's difficult to time his pictures. Anyway, now let's go to the needs. The title of the chapter is Words from a Hard Worker. Cícero Pereira, who had discarnated in 1948, just 6 years before. In other places, I found out that Chico was said to be his dear son. Cícero Pereira was older, and Chico was said to be his dear son. So tells us, Cícero Pereira. This was psychophonic, okay? During the meeting, Chico manifested this message by talk, by speaking. We spirits are old narcissi imprisoned in our illusion. He's accusing us of being, very, very narcissistic. And we admit that there are no pains greater than our own, and that our needs outweigh the needs of others. Selfish now. For this reason, the narrow time of permanence in the carnal body only favor us. In most cases, a denser petrification of selfness in the shell of our old vanity. So he's reminding us of our selfish and vain behavior. And he goes on. We are readers of admirable books. We are moved and we cry. However, afterwards, here we are thrown into the oblivion of every day, as if we were suffering irremediable amnesia in the face of everything that concerns our obligations. To us workers, in our doctrinal houses, we intensify disputes around the human direction, magnetized by the less worthy aspects of the struggle that we were called to develop. As strange as it seems to us, and now the us here is he's referring to the workers that are discarnated, okay? We are usually placed in orientation services together with the members who stayed, us incarnated that are working with them in the Spiritist houses. The Spiritists with Spiritists. And he tells us, I began to understand, and remember, he was a working Spiritist for decades while incarnated. And he tells us, I began to understand something of the gigantic service that is up to us all to push forward. He's talking about us, guys. He continues, we must balance our steps in order to safely guide the step of others. Discipline ourselves within the responsibilities we embrace so as not to threaten the work of those around us. Listen more, do more, talk less. Listen more, do more, talk less. This is for us, guys. And in the end, he tells us, by registering our experience here, we hope that we will come here later, meaning when we discarnate, moving better resources, meaning more evolved. So this is for us, guys. We must, have our act together. Closing the parentheses, and I hope you enjoyed that. This is also from a book. It's called The Spiritist Ideal. These 4 lines are from the Spiritism Manual. It's called Charity Never Fails. He tells us that an act of charity carries within it the indestructible mortar of eternal perfection, composed of wisdom and justice, work and solidarity, trust and peace. One of the points here, and it's something I believe I discussed with Renato in one of these meetings, that it's necessary for us to understand that charity is not restricted to philanthropy. It's a composition of a number of actions from something as little as a smile or a nice word to something as big as working for peace. Charity manifested as a service to others is a liberating door, and unpostponed spiritualist commitment is a commitment of all of us. It has to be, it should be. This comes from the spirit Bezerra de Menezes. From this book, The Spirit of Truth. Is also a book with tens of short communications. And this particular one comes from the spirit of Bezerra de Menezes. And it's called Spiritist Legend. He tells us, the Christian Spiritist must silence discord and reproach and extend understanding and service. And now he gives his interpretation to the unforgettable legend of Allan Kardec, outside of charity, there is no salvation. He tells us, interpreting the concept, save by free from ruin or preserve from harm, is his understanding of outside of charity, there's no salvation. There's no way that we'll be free from ruin. There is no way that we preserve ourselves from harm. An interesting view, isn't it? I hope you can add this one to your collection of thoughts. There are other benefits of Spiritist knowledge. And one of the greatest benefits of Spiritist knowledge is to understand prayer as we Spiritists understand prayer, and how our thoughts propagate through the universal fluid. I hope my English is understandable, guys. I only see two faces here, João and Paco, and I'm not sure if I'm being understood, but anyway, I'm going to go ahead. This comes from the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 27. What Kardec tells us there? That the power of prayer is in the thought. And he explains the mechanism in the book. Let's go with the explaining. Spiritism enables us to understand the action of prayer by explaining the mode of transmission of thought. Whoops, sorry. Here, yeah, sorry about that. I've got a perfectly undesirable that I didn't quite understand. Anyway, might say again, Eric. Let's go. The mode of transmission of thought, either when the being to whom we have prayed comes in answer to our appeal, or when thoughts ascend to this being. He tells us, all beings, both incarnate and discarnate, are immersed in the universal fluid that occupies space, just as we are immersed into the atmosphere of this world. This fluid receives an impulse of the will. This fluid is the vehicle of thought. It's understandable. Thank you. The English is understandable. Let's go. When the thought is directed towards some being, either on earth or in space, from incarnate or discarnate, a fluidic current is established from one to the other to transmit the thought, just as air transmit sound. This is how prayer is heard by spirits, wherever they may be. This is also how spirits communicate among themselves and how they transmit their inspiration to us, and also how communications at a distance are established among incarnates. Did you remember this precise description from the Gospel according to Spiritism? I bet not. Yes, we always think about this book as a lot of reproductions from communications, but this is there. Go and check it. Chapter 27, items 10, 11, 15. That's what I got it from. And finalizing the point, through prayer, humans call to themselves the concourse of good spirits who come to uphold them, to uphold us in our good resolutions and to inspire us with good thoughts. He say they, I was going to say we does acquire the moral strength we need to overcome difficulties and to return to the upright path when we have wandered from it. And he explains that it's not the evil, it's not the evil that good spirits divert from us, but instead they divert us from the thoughts that could cause evil. However, they do so without our being aware of it, so as not to infringe our free will. I didn't write a recollection slide, but what I tried to build here was a reasonable sequence of thoughts with good references, everything is referenced, about the responsibilities that we all have as a consequence, of the Spiritist knowledge that we have acquired and we are still acquiring. And this is all of us. I also did a parenthesis with that communication from the Spirit Cicero, that I think it's good, a cold shower. And for us workers to be less vain and to be less, what's the word? Not narcissistic. Well, I missed the word. Anyway, I think you got the message, guys. This is my final slide. I'm behaving I'm using the 45 minutes that have been allotted to me. The serious Spiritist, I like to remember it, to remind everybody of this, and to remember myself, of course. The serious Spiritist, and I believe we are all here serious Spiritists, have faith, not the faith that does the senses and the will, but rational faith. And this comes again from the Gospel according to Spiritism. That faith which is based on facts and logic, leaving no darkness in its wake. One believes because one is sure, and no one can be sure unless they have understood. I didn't go to the French version. I prefer a different translation that says, one believes because one is sure, and one is sure because one has understood. This is why rational faith does not collapse. Unshakable faith is the kind that can stand face to face with reason in all human epochs. Oops, there's a nice face here in the chat. And guys, that's what I had for today. I took 50 minutes. maybe a little too short for this particular event. Sorry about that. And by the way, let me introduce this lady called Terezinha that's in the video there, very close. She's my mother, 93 years old, very interested. And we didn't know it was going to be on YouTube, so he joined us by Zoom today. So this is my mother.
Thanks, Luiz. Very, very, very good presentation. And we are going to open for a little bit of discussion, questions. Let me start by talking a little bit about Arnaldo Rocha that you mentioned in one of your slides. Arnaldo Rocha was the dialoguer of the medium mystic meetings that Francisco Xavier participated. He was the husband of May that discarnated very early and gave a lot of messages through books from Francisco Xavier. Jesus in the Home, for instance, is one of the books. And also, if you read in the domain of mediumship, there is the famous meeting there that they attend, right? That has Eugenia and Arnaldo Rocha is Raul, the mentor, the dialoguer. Yes. So a little bit illustration on Arnaldo Rocha. Okay.
Did you know this particular chapter?
No, I did not. Yeah, it was good. Good that you brought all these references.
4 or 5, perhaps.
Sorry?
It's at the chapter where he appears as the dialoguer.
Yeah, I think it's chapter 5, 4 or 5 of the domain.
It's right at the beginning, the first mediumistic meeting they describe where we have the medium Eugenia and Selena and Antonio. I completely forgot his name now. I would have to look at
Raul.
it, but Raul, I guess. Yes. Okay, but it's chapter 4 or 5, right?
Yes, I looked for it actually. I went there. It's I'll tell you right now because I opened here. It's chapter 5. Yeah, 4 and 5.
I'll have to check it out because I've never associated the two things.
Yeah, no.
And actually, they even say that the medium Selena probably was Chico Xavier, because it was describing the mediumistic meeting they had at that time. So it's only natural to think that when André Luiz comes to Earth to work together in a mediumistic group and learning about mediumship, that he would go to a mediumship meeting where Chico and Arnaldo Rocha worked together.
Oh, a little bit of additions to the knowledge. Okay, so questions now, comments, questions.
No, I want to ask something. I mean, this is a sincere question. Do you guys find interesting to talk about this? Because I probably said things that you already knew, but I wanted to do it from a different perspective with texts that you usually don't have access to. This is okay or this is bad? You wanted something different?
No, I think I particularly liked. I think it's important to reinforce the ideas and notions that sometimes we all have, but sometimes we forget or we don't use it. But I'll open to others to speak.
I agree from my standpoint. The word reinforcement is exactly what I had in mind for us. I think it's always good to us to go back and ask ourselves, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am 11 o'clock Sunday, although it's raining today, I could be at the beach. Why I choose to be here? I think it's very important for us to make this recollection, to reinforce, to renew our faith in ourselves and in this doctrine. But throughout your talking, I keep listening, and asking myself, how wonderful that would be for the non-spiritist, for someone who just by accident fall into YouTube and find this and read this. How wonderful a thing would be for someone who is uneducated of Spiritism, especially for those who have a fear of Spiritism without ever knowing it, to experience what you just present to us now. I think it would be a wonderful, wonderful experience for those individuals.
Well, you know, it's recorded. It'll be posted on our site. It will be shared on Facebook, and you know, anyone that wants to forward the share, it will be on SGNY's Facebook page and YouTube page. So yes, I agree.
Elmo, do you think this is too introductory for this group?
No. No, it's good.
Thank you, Philip.
Again, I mean, not all the lectures, not all the studies are necessarily intended to bring something new. Again, the word reinforcement is a very powerful and necessary word here. You know, if I learned that from Jussara quite a few years back, when we had a lecture from someone who came from Brazil and gave this lecture, and the next day she asked, how did I find it? And my answer was, I didn't present anything new for me. And she said exactly that. That's not always a lecture, so not always to bring something new for you, but it's to bring a different angle of what's already there. It's to bring a different view. And if we reach a level in which some of those lectures does not present something absolutely new, it's a good sign that you are now in the position to share a little bit what you have gained through this doctrine already.
I think each approach that's given that's different allows us a different way to consider what we already know and some of what we are not aware of. And today's lecture was that for me.
Thank you, Philip.
Okay.
I really enjoyed your presentation, Luiz. It was really fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Luiz. I thought it was very well presented. I appreciate the clarity and the effort that you put in. I value the lectures from whomever. I learn a lot, and it's helpful for me to have an ongoing, maybe even I would say a repetition. It's perfect for me, and I hope it's helpful for others. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. So nobody's asking questions. I'm going to ask a question, Luis. So let's see if we can kickstart the Q&A session. So we learn a lot about theory, right? And that's you know, what you presented. You mentioned the theory, and you mentioned the need to put in practice. And we always say in our prayers to learn, but the more important is to put in practice, you know, in our daily lives. How do you think is the most appropriate or easiest way for us to transform knowledge into becoming a part of who we are, and how to put in practice on our daily lives?
In short, I think it's to think and to understand. And by understanding, knowing. The bulk, in my opinion, the bulk of the Spiritist knowledge is what the elevated spirits tells us to their communication. We experience communications every week in Spiritist meetings. So we have a number of solid experimental arguments to understand that those communications, they are there, they are real, they represent something. By thinking, reasoning, understanding, building our model of the universe, according to what we learn from the spirits. And sometimes we learn from the less elevated spirits also. In my opinion, is the way that we can have assurance as much as possible that what we know and we understand is the reality, and that our mind model is very close to the reality. And if we do believe something, I mean, if we talk the talk, we should walk the walk, because it doesn't make sense if we do not behave like that. So in short, the most sensible way is by thinking, understanding, and convincing oneself what's true, what's not. Does it
May
make sense?
May I say in a simplistic manner for myself, take the concepts and practice them.
Thanks, Philip.
I have to say, may I share something?
Sure, Paco.
You mentioned, Luis, that we should not be longer looking for earth happiness. And I have some difficulties with that concept, because it is my experience that I have found some serenity in this earth life. Okay, myself in my own life, in my own trajectory. So it may be true that I'm going to be probably in bliss in my next one, as the more I learn about Spiritism. But Spiritism and spirituality has brought me into this life. Okay, some serenity and happiness. That's my point. You know, I know it's not. It could be that that I want it now. Like they said, when do I want it? I want it now. But the study of Spiritism and spirituality gives me clarity, gives me understanding, and brings me, kind of serenity in the now. That's how I look at it, and that's why I keep coming back here. Okay. So I know that I'm probably in the next one I'll be better, but as of now, I concentrate on what I'm learning here, what I've learned so far, and that brings me. I'm not saying gonna bring me bliss, but some sense of happiness and tranquility and serenity that I get here. I get from from this knowledge. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Nothing wrong with that. And just to clarify, the point of that particular statement that we should not be limited to pursuing happiness in this particular incarnation, because putting things in perspective will be true a significant number of incarnations besides this one. We have been and we will be. So we should not limit ourselves to this particular one, but thinking on acquiring and improving on this particular one and looking at the big picture, not just the little.
I understand now what you're saying, that the microscopic kind of in my journey. I have to look at the macro kind of journey. Now I understand. Yes, thank you.
The forest, not the leaf.
Exactly, the forest, not the tree. I'm looking at it from the micro, and you're placing emphasis on the macro. Thank you.
Thanks, Paco.
My presentation was too short. You probably said 45 minutes for the USSF one, and here should
Yes.
have been longer. Sorry about that.
No problem. You know, it was good. Sorry, the alarm is ringing here in my building.
If I had more slides in English, I would, get them and go straight to another subject. But unfortunately, I don't. Sorry about that.
Luis, I have to also thank you for making us aware and bringing forward the other sources that we, that I've heard about this, about that, but you presented it in a much more concrete fashion. So that those sources are there, which
right.
I always heard it, but like when I saw it there, oh, the book is there. Yeah. Okay. So that gave me a sense of reinforcement once again.
Yeah. Just to put in perspective, because Luis brought a lot of books from Francisco Xavier, right? And there are, I don't know the number today, maybe Sarah knows, it's like 460, 70, 80 books of Francisco Xavier. So of course you are going to have hundreds of books that are not translated, because it's impossible to have all those books in a short period. And so, normally the focus is always on the books that either the Brazilian Spiritist Federation or the International Spiritist Council thinks are more important, in terms of priority. You have to prioritize, right? So a lot of this is books of messages are not translated, because the André Luiz collection that is all translated, all the Emmanuel historic collection is translated, but I don't think we have 50 books of Francisco Xavier translated, if so, right?
And I included them, Joe, not as a criticism anyway, but just as a way to oxygenate and to at least a book exists and it's there and you're part of it. Just trying to help.
Absolutely. Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Got a question.
Renato, I was missing you.
You know me. I listen first. That's what he said, right? You need to listen. No, I was just wanna, maybe Luis can share his point of view, because with knowledge comes responsibility, as he explained. But if you look, in the Spiritism, people, I'm not saying all of them, but there's people that pick and choose what they want. Some people, they only want to go to the Spirit Center for passes. Some people, they only go for the Spirit's book. Some people, they don't, want to have nothing to do with mediumship. So people, sometimes they get part of it and not the whole thing. So their responsibility of the knowledge of Spiritism is kind of a divide or spread around and not complete. So what's your take on, since most people, when they go to the Spirit school, they have a general idea what it is, but they only pick and choose what they want, be responsible.
It's an interesting question. The general orientation that we have is that we should not judge the others. We should, worry about ourselves. If we see someone with a behavior that we don't think it's okay, we can fraternally, say something once, but it's not our job to criticize the others. So I don't have any problems those who do not accept everything or accept partially things. I believe in one way or another, each of us viewed its own model of the universe, and Spiritism is there as well. What I really think it's strong in Spiritism is the experimental side of Spiritism happens every day, everywhere, all over the world. So it's like anything that happens outside our window. It's there, it's happening. So it gives us strength. And the second thing is that we have, through Spiritism, through mediums, we have a structured way to learn because they are teachers. Before Spiritism, I'm sure civilizations learn through mediums, but not in a structured way as we are being able to do. And this makes a lot of difference. We should not, in my opinion, elude ourselves on the sense that we have all PhDs from the ethereal world teaching us. Guys, let's be real. We're in grade school, first year, maybe less, maybe preschool. So we might have very good teachers, but to our level, we are still in, 1 orange plus 2 oranges are 3 oranges. We are not talking here about imaginary numbers. We are not learning, Hamiltonians. No, we are still in 1 orange plus 2 oranges. So those are the teachers we have today. But they know so much more than us. And going back to Renato's question, it's, up to each one of us to incorporate the part of Spiritism that we believe. And it's up to each one of us. And our evolution is up to our own responsibility. Yes, Marilyn, we are all in kindergarten. I agree with you. And I think how it is. I think we are blessed. I might say my personal experience. I am blessed by being able to work actively in a Spiritist group, because this is a constant renewal experience, at least for me. We do not remember what we did in other incarnations. We do not remember our past existence, discarnated. So what we have here, besides our intuition, is the opportunity to renew our knowledge, our belief. And it's good to have, experimental data to subsidize that. It becomes not preaching, it becomes science. I plan, by the way, Joe, I don't know if I can tell them, but I plan to give a talk on Spiritists, philosophy, and science. And I addressed a little of that there. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, yes, you can announce, yes. That's going to be October 3rd through the United States Spiritist Federation on the Saturday series of lecture. You can mark your calendars, October 3rd. Spiritist, Science and Philosophy, that's what's the title, right?
Yeah, Spiritist, Science, and Spiritist Philosophy and Science.
Spiritist Philosophy and Science, yes, okay. Okay, anyone else?
And thank you, Renato. At least have your question. May I ask you, Renato, something?
Go ahead.
I remember a question of yours months ago. It has to do with our belief in spirits.
Say that again?
No, it had to do with our belief in the spirits, in the errant spirits. That's central to Spiritism. Can you today, with all that you learned in your personal experiences, believe that we were not errant spirits some time ago and that we'll be errant spirits again in the future?
I'm not sure. You say errant spirits? That's what you say?
Errant.
Errant spirits?
Errant. Yeah.
Errant.
So the question is, if I believe we are going to be errant spirits, that's the question?
Not, no, it's slightly different. Anyway, forget about it.
No, say, explain it.
Well,
My point being, there are some things that are central to Spiritism. Central. One of them is that spirits exist.
That's errant spirit.
The other is that the spirits that communicate with us, they are no other than former incarnated spirits that just discarnated. This is sort of central. A lot of things, are a consequence of that. So I don't see space for not, holding to that idea. That's so central. So I wonder, does anybody disagree with that?
I think there are some basic points that if you do not accept or understand, it becomes very difficult for the whole rest of Spiritism to make sense, right? Reincarnation. Without reincarnation, there is no way you can understand Spiritism, right? What the Spiritism teachings. It's like when we talk about Spiritism, right, with science, philosophy, and religion, it's the table with 3 legs, right? You remove one leg, the table falls. And I think that when we study Spiritism, some of the basic concepts of Spiritism, if we remove any of them, or if you're not comfortable with any of them, the whole structure risks collapsing, right? Yeah, exactly.
There's no table, yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think that the notion of reincarnation, the concept of life in the spiritual world, and the time we spend there, what we do there, and how everything works logically, it's all an integral part of what we have to be comfortable with. It's not even believe, right? Because it's not I believe in the sun. I know the sun exists, right? And so, and I, for some time, I have this issue with talking about beliefs, because it's once it's not that you believe in reincarnation. I know reincarnation exists because it's the same thing as say I believe in the sun. Well, we're not primitives to believe that the sun is a god, right? So, but again, I understand. But I think we're limited by our language and by how can we express outside, right? Because when you talk about reincarnation, people will ask, do you believe in reincarnation? So you have to answer, I believe in reincarnation. And the correct answer is, I know reincarnation exists.
I don't think anything that I felt I know, but from an early age, I had questions about things that came to mind that others didn't seem to appreciate. So my question was, how do I know these things that I follow? And the only explanation I've ever come up with that explains my having knowledge that other people, some younger, some older, didn't seem to recognize in life, that I must have come here before. And therefore, based on what I believe I know, I must have recycled through life several times. And that's how we get there. When we acquire knowledge, we don't know where it came from. That's how we get there to believe that we are reincarnated individuals.
Yeah, thanks, Philip.
Actually, this change from, or this transition, in my opinion, from a more limited vision to this particular vision, it happens in science. I mean, it happens a lot. There's an example I usually do. I did this week in my Wednesday class. And actually, I believe I referenced Bertrand Russell. He says that do not be afraid of what's the word in English? Not new ideas, but of different, because everything we believe today once was something different, was something unusual. And give me 2 minutes. Before 1900, all scientists believed that the light propagated through something called ether. The same way that sound propagates through air, light propagates through ether. Then two guys, Michelson and Morley, they wanted to find out what was the velocity of Earth related to ether. That's reasonable. We know that Earth is moving, so it will have a velocity. And they made very, very precise, they tried to make very, very precise measurements of the speed of light. When the Earth was this way and this way, because the Earth rotates, they couldn't measure a difference. Then they wait and redid their experiments along 5 years. Very, very sophisticated. We're talking about blocks of granite floating on pools of mercury so that the thing was stable, the interferometer. And no difference was found. How do you explain that? And then Einstein came up with a breakthrough concept, what we call an epistemological breakthrough. He said, the speed of light is constant. What varies is time. Time shortens or stretches. Oh boy, how unimaginable that concept is. Imagine someone in early days of the 20th century. Time is not constant in the universe. Come on, give me a break. And today, this is something we accept like this. Something similar has to do with the quantum theory as a whole. So my point being, I hope 100 years from now, we will not have to defend to others this strange idea that, we discarnate and we become errant spirits, then we incarnate again. Maybe in 100 years, guys, this will become part of the fabric of our knowledge, and we're gonna go further ahead. I hope that. I really hope for the moment when that's incorporated into the body of science.
Yeah, the only thing I say here, the only maybe is the 100 years, that it will become part of our common knowledge in the future someday, yes. But if it's 100 years or 50 or 300 years, that is the variable, the variable of time. Yeah.
Marisa wrote 530 here. I don't know what it means.
It's the number of books that Francisco Xavier psychographed. Latest I because the books keep adding books. They keep collecting texts and adding books. The number grows. But last I heard was like 470. But I don't know. Maybe she's right. I really have no idea. Okay. All right. If anyone has any last question.
I got another question.
Go ahead, Renato.
So Luis, I was just reading the dictionary just to give an idea for the word knowledge. I mean, there's tons of definition. The one I got here is knowledge are facts or information and skills acquired by a person through experience or education, the theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. So in your opinion, do you think there's a difference from a person that goes through Spiritism and learn from an educational and theoretical perspective from the one that goes from the practical and experience way?
I don't think there is a difference. The knowledge is there, it is the same. I believe for each one of us, when that theoretical knowledge is confirmed by personal experience, it adds a lot. Philip shared his personal experience, I could share mine, and I know you have your personal experience, Renato, so I really think it helps. Not because you doubt it when it's only theoretical, but because you feel a lot more immersed in that knowledge. The knowledge is more present, has more to do with your experience at that particular moment. That's my personal opinion. It gives a bit more sprinkles on the Sunday. Cherry on the top.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do you disagree, João? Do you have an opinion about this?
No, I agree with what you said. Yeah, I completely agree.
I think there are things that can only be learned through experiment, to practice, and there are things that does not require to experiment. Philosophically speaking, I think charity can only be learned to practice. We can read and you can memorize all the definitions of charity and expand it to the different philosophies, but unless you get out and practice, you never know what it is. And there are things that you don't have to practice. Ostensive mediumship. You may be able to understand it, know it, without experience it. So I think it goes two ways. And in Spiritism, the fundamental, the most important part of Spiritism is its moral teachings. And from what we know, the moral teachings to be consumized in our knowledge, it has to be through experience. But the technical part can be done just by learning from others without needing to exercise it.
Thanks, Elmo. Okay, so we are close to the end of it. Thank you, Luis, once again. We really appreciate it. Next Sunday, we are going to have our Q&A. It's the last Sunday of the month. So, whatever questions you forgot to ask or you can bring for next Sunday, okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Sure. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we are grateful for our lecture presentation by Luiz today, The Consequences of Spiritist Knowledge. We've learned that love is the inner sun and that the law of love replaces personality with the union of all beings. Spiritism is a message of redemption. Can we lessen our vanity and selfishness and inquire and incorporate more balance, more discipline? May we listen more intently, may we do more, and may we talk less. And we remind ourselves that charity is love in action or service to others, not necessarily or exclusively financial. May we receive the good benefits through prayer, the power of prayer and the action of the universal fluid through the good spirits. With knowledge comes responsibility, and we can all play a part in this. We can do our part the best way that we can. We give thanks today for our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the mentors, the guides, the helpers, the healers who are with us. They have inspired us and guide us today to receive the information, the knowledge, and to be able to share it so directly with our other participants. We are truly grateful for these blessings that we have received. May we continue to be of service. May we continue with our prayers, with our studies and mindfulness throughout the week. And we humbly ask for the love, light, and peace of Christ to be within us, in our hearts, in our minds. And as we go forward during the week, we also ask for the protection, the safety for not only ourselves, but our family members, our loved ones, friends, and coworkers. May we go forth today with an uplifted heart and a more enlightened mind. We are grateful for what we have received, the blessings encompassing all of us. And may we put this forward on our path throughout the week. Please go forward in peace. Go forward now as beacons of light. So be it.